time. Let's get the Leading the League segment off and running with one of our favorites, JP Morosi, who joins us here. JP, Blake Snell, breaking the news himself on Instagram late yesterday, at least in the Eastern time zone. He goes to the Dodgers, 5-year, $182 million deal, reported $52 million signing bonus, a lot to unpack. Which way do you want to go first?
Sure. Well, Robert, Anthony, first of all, happy Thanksgiving. And yes, we do love it when the player himself puts it out there. It's a pretty good source when it comes right from the player.
Got to trust it.
All the ambiguity is gone. Blake Snell, a Dodger. One fun note as we get started, the Dodgers now have half of the Rays starting rotation from the 2020 World Series with Snell and Glasnow just 4 years ago. How about that? And, of course, Andrew Friedman was the Rays GM when Snell was drafted by them back in 2011. So some good biographical notes there. But the most important thing financially, guys, is this. Snell now has the second highest AAV of any pitching-only contract of 5 years or more in the history of the game, trailing only Jacob deGrom. If I'm a pitcher out there right now, it's a very healthy number to begin the year. And let's also make this point. As you alluded to it earlier, Robert, that Snell has signed 112 days earlier in this offseason cycle than he did a year ago. More than 3 months ahead of time based on last year's schedule, and for good reason. He had that bumpy start to the year. And when you look at what his ERA was in April and May, he was not fully healthy yet. And if you were to tell us at that point in time that he'd be signing for $182 million, we didn't necessarily see that coming. But it's because of what Blake did in the second half of the year. His final 14 starts, an ERA of 1.23. Dominance from a two-time winner of the Cy Young Award. And the other thing, Robert and Anthony, that stood out to me is he actually lowered his walk rate. A lot of the conversation last year coming off of the Cy Young season with the Padres was the walk rate and the concerns that teams had about strike throwing. Well, he actually lowered the walk rate.
Yeah.
He bumped up the strikeout rate. So the peripheral numbers are very strong. And again, you see there what he did the final 14 starts. The interesting secondary note on this for the Dodgers that I think we should not lose track of is it probably, not certainly, but probably means that Walker Buehler, Jack Flaherty won't be back in 2025 based on the market dynamics.
Yeah.
And Jack Flaherty was one of the most consistent pitchers for the Dodgers in the playoffs. They don't win the World Series without Jack Flaherty. And Walker Buehler threw the last pitch. So those are two really important guys in the Dodger rotation who will likely not be back in 2025. And listen, it's a trade that most of us would say, yeah, it's a good trade in terms of talent and potential. You're basically trading Flaherty and Buehler out for Snell and Ohtani in. But we also have to realize Ohtani, especially given the injury in the World Series, there's a very real chance he's not ready to go on the mound on opening day.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's important to put that context in mind that let's not let the moment escape without recognizing the importance of Buehler and Flaherty to the Dodgers World Series championship.
JP, real quick, what does this mean for Burns, for Fried, for Flaherty? Now that we have two kind of data points, Blake Snell and then Yusei Kikuchi, who also signed his deal a few days, or agreed to his deal a few days ago.
Right. Very healthy numbers. I think this contract is good news for Burns, Fried, Flaherty, Buehler, and many others. I think Mark Feinsand's piece this morning at MLB.com did a great job of explaining just where that market sits and the importance now for teams like the Red Sox and the Orioles and to some extent the Yankees to really get to work on filling some needs. I would also say the San Diego Padres, who gave the Dodgers their biggest challenge. They're one starting pitcher away as well. There's a lot of starters still out there. And by the way, I certainly want to point out Clayton Kershaw's name on the left-hand side of the screen. There's still a pretty healthy expectation he's going to be back with the Los Angeles Dodgers in 2025. Shane Bieber's name is really interesting. Maybe he's someone that signs a little bit later and returns during the season. But I think that, of course, the Juan Soto sweepstakes looms above all of this. And if the Red Sox are able to interrupt what is seen as a New York storyline between the Mets and the Yankees, but we are probably going to see some bidding wars between those two arch rivals in the American League East, and the Yankees and Red Sox for pitching, and the Orioles guys. They were not good enough to get past the Kansas City Royals with Corbin Burnes.
Correct.
They have got some work to do this offseason.
Well, Anthony, and I want to bring you in here because I'm glad he mentions the Orioles.
Yeah.
And the men or the people that are there are many of them came from Houston. They were part of the building of that.
Yeah.
But Houston didn't become Houston until they got Justin Verlander.
Yeah.
Via trade. They need a big ticket front line starter. Grayson Rodriguez has the potential to do that, but he's young and he's injured.
And Zach Eflin has proven that he can be a nice piece,
Yes.
but is he that frontline guy? Not necessarily. They get that, and then you start to lengthen out that starting rotation. Obviously, they have some guys who are injured, that they look to get back at some point, whether it's Kyle Bradish or Tyler Wells. I think when you look at the names that they have, though, they have a decent rotation in place, but it's going to be, can you get that guy at the top of the rotation? Can you get that big arm that can really take you over the top? They had the chance this past year with Burnes. Things fell apart, though, towards the end of the year with guys not being healthy, Rodriguez not throwing the way that they wanted him to, and things just didn't work out. That bullpen right now, it could be a big strength. They have a lot of big names back there, and so they could attack things in a different way if they don't get that frontline starter and really even continue to beef up that bullpen and see if that helps them long term.
Hey, JP, we're up against it, so give us a couple of quick hitters. One on Garrett Crochet, latest on him, and then Nathan Eovaldi.
Yes. So Garrett Crochet, trade-wise, pay really close attention to the Boston Red Sox. They're the team that they have the prospects, especially if they don't get a Burnes or if they don't get a Fried, and we'll see how things play out with Juan Soto. You think about the Red Sox and how disappointing this past season was. They need to make a massive move here. And if it's not going to be in free agency, if they don't get Soto, then pay really close attention on a possible Garrett Crochet trade. They've got the prospects to get it done. And remember, the White Sox, if they make this move, I was told again this week, there's been some reports about Willie Abreu possibly being part of this conversation. I was told the White Sox are so far away from what they perceive to be their competitive window that they would prefer to get prospects who have not even debuted yet in the major league, whether it's an Anthony or a Meyer or a Campbell. Now, finally, on Eovaldi, the Atlanta Braves, I'm told, are potentially in there along with the Baltimore Orioles. So with Nate Eovaldi, he has that postseason resume, guys, of being someone that you trust in a big spot in October.
Definitely.
So again, you just talked about the Orioles. I love the Eovaldi fit to Baltimore as someone with that postseason track record to give them a bit more belief once they arrive to October.